welcome, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with this month of the Three Principles Movies online training.
It's good to be here, Rudy, and good to finally meet you.
Oh, you too. Well, Joe, for people who don't know of you, could you sort of tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Rudy, I'm a licensed psychologist. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I've been involved with the principles really for about 35 years now. So I've been doing this for a long time as a teacher, as a therapist, counselor, trainer, and have done a lot of writing about the three principles over the years. I've written 5 books about it. So currently I'm mostly doing training with organizations on resilience and chemical dependency. So I do a lot of work in the substance abuse area, helping to design treatment centers and train staffs, that type of thing. So, and a lot of coaching. I do a lot of individual coaching, mostly over Skype like this.
Joe, to you, what does teaching from simplicity, from the simplicity of the three principles mean?
Well, that's a great question, Rudy. And I think when I talk to people in the medical field or in mental health or addictions or even in the business area, what people have in our world of all this technology, and we have so much information now, there's so much complexity to every field. And in medicine, for example, there's always new advancements and so many changes in healthcare laws, and also there's so much thinking going on and so many programs to help with the overload of thinking, that one of the things that draws people to the three principles approach to helping their organizations or their staffs is that there's nothing to do with the three principles. There's not a workload with it. There's not a lot of stuff to read. There's not 7 steps that you have to practice every day in order to realize your health, your resilience. And with the simplicity of this paradigm, we're really just directing people back to this very simple fact that the only reality that we live in psychologically is the world of our own thinking, moment to moment. And that brings it down to such a simple point for people to remember. Like, we might have a 3-day training and then 3 or 4 months of coaching with an organizational group. But it's always bringing people back to that simple, fine point that when you realize in the moment that your experience, your feelings, your perception, your behavior, your reactions, your stress, everything that you're feeling in this psychological world that we live in is coming to you from thought. And that the recognition of that, which we all go in and out of. Some moments I'm aware of it, and some moments I completely forget it and get caught up in my perceptions and my feelings and my reactions. But I have I like to call it a super GPS, a global that I can get off track, but it's always going to, like, I have one in my car and it always says rerouting and brings you back to the point of your destination, which is clarity, new thinking, a nice feeling inside, that you're not reactive, that you're able to respond to any situation that in your life, professionally or personally, from that simple wisdom, that calm feeling of new thinking that's always available to us. And so whether I'm working with a CEO or a heroin addict, and I run the gamut there, which may be talked about in a very different language. The way that my skills come out is going to be very different with different people that I'm talking to, but it always comes back to that simple point. And the principles really think just the awareness that we're thinking and we're the creator of our experience, but that we have this resource, this extraordinary resource that we can absolutely count on, that we call mind and the three principles, to give us the thinking that we need to deal with any situation in our lives. And teaching that to my clients, to the organizations that I work with, as a teacher and as a therapist and as a coach, it's like, if I was a carpenter, the principles would be my level and my ruler, to make sure everything was square. That's the basic tool of a carpenter, and it keeps bringing them back so that whatever you're building is going to be square. And if it's square, it's not going to fall over. So having the foundation of the principles gives me a way to keep myself low and clear about dealing with the clients in a way that's going to teach from that simplicity, from that clarity.
Mm. So when you talk to various groups, what is it that you're kind of talking about? I mean, how do you put across the simplicity of the principles to, maybe CEOs or business people in a way that is helpful to them?
Well, as a teacher, the first thing for me to do is I really want to listen to my audience.
Uh-huh.
I want to know my audience. So before I do work with a group or with a person, I do a lot of listening. And I really get to know their world and their language, so that what I'm saying, even though that's the same simplicity, I'm saying it in a language and in a manner which they can see it as relevant to their world. And so that requires me living from the principles rather than teaching about the principles. It's not really, I'm not so much teaching conceptually, although I do share a lot of concepts about principles and about living from the inside out, which is recognizing that your feelings and your thoughts are connected, versus the outside in, which we all go back and forth. So I have a lot of things that I teach, concepts, but every time I teach them, I'm teaching them in the moment in a fresh way. And that to me is the most important thing as a teacher, that you're not talking from here about a concept, but you're talking from your own understanding in the moment, and connecting to that person, to that group, to that audience that you're with in that moment, because mind knows how to connect. Mind knows how. It's like I don't have to do the thinking, Rudy. It's like I'm almost, when I do my best work, I don't always do my best work, but when I do, it's when I'm kind of out of the way, in a sense. My own personal thinking is out of the way. My own personal thinking about the three principles, about this paradigm, about my concepts. Because before I talk to you, I know I already know this. I don't have to think about what I'm going to say. I don't have to rehearse, a program. I may plan for it. I might have handouts or overheads or things like that to help people feel safe. And, this is professional. Like when I'm working with scientists, for example, at a healthcare institution that are all researchers. They want data, they want controlled studies, that's what they're used to. So I present it in a way that isn't that, but brings them into this world in a very respectful way. So making that connection and building that bridge between where the client is at and what I have to teach is extremely important to me. The second thing is to know that everybody's the same, regardless of what costume they have on or what title they have before them, whether they're the head of a major corporation or healthcare institution. We're all the same. We're all in the same boat. And that takes the intimidation factor out of it for me, to see that we're all one. We're all doing the same thing here. And that puts them at ease too, and helps them see that I know them that I understand them, that I'm not up here and they're down here. We're all doing the same thing. And the other thing that really helps me, Rudy, to know is that every human being that's sitting in that audience or in that room with me or over Skype already knows this at some level within their consciousness. That this isn't something that you learn, it's something you remember, that you bring back into awareness through insight. And that's the tool of training, is insight. This is an insight versus an informational based model of teaching. When we teach people, our whole hope, our whole setup, everything we do is geared towards the insight of the individuals that we're trying to reach. And it can only happen through insight. You know, people can memorize these 3 principles, mind, thought, and consciousness. That's pretty easy in a split second. But realizing it through insight, through life experience, is where it comes to life, that it becomes real, that it's realized. We used to call it health realization for that reason. I often refer on my website, I call it resilience realization, because resilience is already within all of us. We're built for that, but we cover it all up with a lot of layers of insecure thinking and misunderstanding about, you know, where our experience is coming from. All my life before I learned the principles, I thought it was everybody else and everything else in my life that was determining my feelings, my bank account balance, my how my wife was treating me that day, what traffic was doing if I was driving my car, all the things I had on my to-do list that hadn't been done. That all of those things drove my emotions and my feelings. And getting at the simplicity of this and seeing I'm always just feeling my thinking. I love that term. I'm always just feeling my thinking. It's like that level of the carpenter. Oops, that's out of balance. And it reboots me in a way that helps clear my mind of extra thought and see the simplicity again. Coming back to that simplicity. Because when I work with physicians, surgeons, for example, you might be working on an incredibly complicated operation for many, many hours. And if they start thinking too far ahead or back to what they should have done before the operation occurred, they're going to get out of the moment and out of that clarity of what they need to do at that particular moment. So the principles help them to recognize when they're getting off balance. Their bubble on their level is going off, and they just being aware of that reboots them so that they can see how to get the team to work together effectively, how to just, you know, take a breath and just get back to what I was doing. And or in a meeting, you know, so much of medicine happens in meetings these days, and egos clash, and people lose their bearings because there's so many changes in our healthcare system in this country right now. And the people who've learned the principles within the organization are like this calming gravitational pull for the rest of the team. Their calmness and their clarity grounds the team, grounds the meeting in a way that it looks kind of magical to the other people. They don't, well, how is this happening? But what the leader is doing, who understands this paradigm, is that they know that if they lose their mind gets caught up in the outside in thinking, mm-hmm. that they're going to get reactive, try to control other people, try to move the meeting in a particular way. But if they get their bearings back, that simplicity again, then it it all flows from that. And they'll just know to say something. It'll occur to them in the moment that will simplify the complexity of the conversation, that will bring it back to its essence. It will help everyone settle down. So this is the way this is playing out in the medical world, the corporate world, in the world of, and then I'll take it to another example would be working with addicts, people who are addicted to alcohol, drugs. In many cases in our country now, it's heroin is the big drug. Helping an addict to recognize in the moment when their mind is really getting speeded up and they're starting to think about ways they could get the drug, or is to help them catch that early on, nip it in the bud, so that they're recognizing their thinking before they ever get to the point where they're actually seeking the drug. And so it's been very profound in the addiction world for people to learn this. It does two things. It helps them see what the real problem is their thinking. It's not the drug. Secondly, it helps them see that they're already well. They're not sick. They're not damaged goods. They're already whole and complete. Those two things, I've been told by hundreds of people with addictions, were the two things that help them recover the most. Knowing how the mind worked to create their moment-to-moment experience, and that they were already whole and well. So, I don't know.
It occurred to me when you said that we were talking about the word realize, and when you said that, I heard real, and it was much like you've got your eyes on what's real, realized. And it kind of occurred as you were talking that people have eyes for what's actually real, what's actually true, that your thinking's actually coming from your feelings actually coming from your feeling in the moment, like that's real, as opposed to what isn't real, i.e. my feeling is coming from something other than my thinking, like it's my wife creating my feeling, it's my job, it's my boss, it's my children creating my feeling. Because although it looks like that, it's not really, that's not the truth, if you see what I mean. But what is real is that we feel our thinking in the moment. And having eyes on that, you realize the truth of your experience, and you can kind of, I don't know, you kind of enter more of a truer perspective on things. And so as you said that, it just kind of made sense that what I'm hearing you say almost is that all these people that you talk to, you're basically helping them have eyes on what's actually true in their experience rather than what isn't true.
Yeah, I mean, so much of our life is not spent in reality, but in the illusion. You know, It's been called the illusion, the great illusion, and all of the illusion is our personal thinking. When we get focused, let's imagine we have a windshield in front of us, like in a car, or we call it a windscreen in England, I guess, right? Yeah. So we call it a windshield. So if you get it gets spattered with your personal thinking, your focus becomes what's on the screen rather than what's beyond the screen in reality, in the real things, the rain, what the CEO just said, rather than what you think he meant by what he said, or all you make up in your head about what the other people are thinking in the room, or the fact that right now you're just fine. But when you imagine yourself in the future, but what if tomorrow I want to use heroin? Then in this moment, you're having the thought of what if tomorrow I use heroin, and you're going to get anxious. You're going to feel that stress and that fear of relapse, but realizing that, oh, I'm looking at the screen. I'm looking at the clutter on the window rather than the truth of what is. Right now, I'm fine. And I'll be fine tomorrow when I get there. One of the implications of this understanding is that the future is an incomplete equation. But in the future, I don't know what insight I'll have in that moment to deal with that unknown reality. But I know I'll have an insight. I'll have I have available to me thinking that I don't have right now in this moment. But I know where the well is that I can draw from for that new thought. And so there's no old thinking that you can store that's going to prepare you for the future. But if you know where the source of truth is, the source of true knowledge, true insight, pure consciousness and pure thought and pure mind, then you don't live in fear. You don't live in fear as much anyway, you know. We all get, tricked by our thinking from time to time and forget. But that's no problem. So what? We all do. It's not a big deal that if you're a skier that you occasionally fall down. You just get back up and keep skiing. Mm-hmm. And it's part of skiing to fall down. And it's part of life to go outside in and forget that you're thinking and get caught up in the illusion. But that's what your feelings are for. They wake you up. Your feelings are like an alarm system, an awakening system to wake you back up to the fact that you're feeling thinking every moment. And you're focused on the windscreen, the windshield, instead of what's beyond it, what's really happening. And so that's a little bit of a paradox. What's really happening, of course, is always our thinking in the moment. But there is actually a lion or a cougar behind that bush that's shaking, or I'm imagining there is one. But if there is one, I better get out of the way. I have to do something about that. Or if it's like just my imagination and I recognize that, I calm down. But there are real things that happen in life that we have to deal with. We have to pay our bills. We have to see how to creatively work with a client. We have to make plans for going on vacation. It doesn't just happen magically. We still do things. We still behave. But when we have the freedom of simplicity in our lives, nothing is such a big deal. It's just not a big deal unless we make it a big deal.
Yeah, I liked what you said about that we can displace ourselves forward in time with our thinking and think of scary things. And at this time, we don't have a resolution to that future thing. But who knows, in the future, you probably will have, because there's this innumerable insight in the moment, fresh thought in the moment, in that future moment that has the capacity to arise to resolve that. And I think that's really important, because so often I've imagined these terrible future things and they have actually happened. But it's kind of worked out because I've have access to that new thought in that moment, and I've come up with things in that moment I couldn't have thought back in the past when I was worrying about it.
Yeah, the new thinking always comes to us in the now, and you can never predict what the new thinking is going to be before you're in that now. Mm. But you can know a principle. And see, this is where the principle is like the principle of gravity. You can't control gravity, but you can respect gravity. And you can understand gravity. And the more we understand gravity, the more we can use that principle to do things we never could do before. Before we understood gravity, we couldn't go to outer space. We couldn't fly airplanes. We couldn't have a computer like this. We didn't understand the physics, the quantum physics behind how all of this works. We couldn't be doing this right now. So understanding those principles has implications.
Mm.
Understanding the principles of the mind has vast implications for humanity, for the problems that, I mean, we're at a critical state in this evolution in the world now, in terms of the thinking and the decisions we're making to take care of our planet, to have peace in this world. And so many of the decisions are being made from really misunderstanding and thinking that's not grounded in wisdom or insight, but grounded in the past and resentments, and this is the way we always do it, and humanity can't move forward without evolutionary thinking. And evolutionary thinking is insight. And we will be able to figure it out. We will be able to see how to deal with whatever comes in our life, even our own death, so that we can be at peace about our own death. It's an inevitability. You're going to die. I'm going to die. We're all going to die. But if I'm sitting around worrying my whole life about dying and live in fear of dying, and I become a hypochondriac, or I get Munchausen's disease where I'm always having to be sick in order. Yeah, it's just, this is the craziness of misunderstanding. It leads us into incredible complexity of thought and complexity of problems. And it makes life look really overwhelming and unbelievably burdening. And when one of my books I called Slowing Down to the Speed of Life. And I got that, Rudy, from a client of mine. And I asked him at the end of his therapy how he summarized what he got out of the therapy. And he said, he thought for a long time, and he says, well, I guess I've learned how to slow down to the speed of life.
Mm.
And when Richard Carlson and I were thinking of a title for our book, that just popped in my mind as an insight from his insight, but as a memory insight. And I thought, that really says it, that we are only in this moment, always. This is all there is. And when we have that realization of this moment, we slow down to the speed of life, real time. And when we live from there, ironically, we plan much better for the future. We heal much better from the past and learn from it, and garner the wisdom and the lessons from the past in the moment. But we don't dwell in the past very much, as necessary, but not much. I hardly spend any time thinking about the past, very little thinking about the future. But I have a very complex life in many ways. I have many businesses I'm doing and 2 books I'm working on. I mean, doing all these different things, but it doesn't seem like a big deal. It seems like a very manageable. As long as I'm in this moment, I'm good.